Welcome back, everybody. Today, I want to talk about the brutal reality of sexless marriages. Highly requested topic. Let's get into it. Usually, it starts something like this. You're lying there again, staring at the ceiling. You're scrolling through your phone at 2 a.m. while she sleeps with her back to you. Another night, another week, another month without touch. And nobody tells you this shit when you put the ring on. But it's the oldest story in the book, the classic bait and switch that so many men experience once the papers are signed. And right now, all across the country, dude, thousands of guys are in the same exact position as you, lying next to someone that hasn't touched them in months, sometimes years, wondering if this is actually normal, wondering if every married dude secretly is living the same reality, remembering when sex wasn't something you had to beg for, or worse, something you stopped asking for because, rejection hurts so damn much. You're not alone. Sexless marriages are way more common than people actually think, to be honest. Like as common as driving a Toyota Camry. And you'd never know it from the outside, though, because there's couples posting anniversary pics with still so in love after 12 years captions, and they haven't had sex since probably 2019. This is a reality that the mainstream doesn't want to talk about. How many guys signed up for marriage thinking they were locking down consistent sex, only to discover they were actually signing up for a sexless future? And how many men were forced, or fed, I should say, the Disney mentality about marriage, only to discover completely different realities once the honeymoon period ended? And the cold truth is that for many women, sex is transactional. It's a tool used during courtship to secure commitment. And we know this. Once the ring is on her finger, the incentive structure changes completely. She secured your resources, your commitment, your provider status. The biological imperative that drove her to desire your sexuality often diminishes once those security needs are met. It's not malicious, it's just evolutionary programming. Getting sexually rejected by your wife just hits different than getting turned down at the bar. When some woman at the club isn't interested, it's whatever. When the woman who promises to choose you for life doesn't want you touching her, that's when the shit starts cutting to the bone. And it makes you question everything about yourself. And the spiral starts. You look in the mirror differently, you start wondering if you've gotten too fat or too old. Maybe you're too boring. You replay these conversations in your head, wondering what you said wrong. You watch her check in her phone and wonder if she's talking to someone else. The questions eat at you while you're trying to focus at work, while you're playing with your kids, while you're sitting across from her at the dinner, pretending everything's fine. And you know it isn't. The worst part, you've got nobody to talk to about it. You can't exactly bring it up with your buddies over beers. Hey man, pass the nachos. By the way, my wife hasn't touched me since last Christmas. There's no support group for guys living like roommates with their wives. And the blue pill conditioning runs deep in society because society tells you to step up your game. Maybe you need to do more chores. Maybe you need to be more romantic. Maybe you need to communicate better. And sure, okay, some guys could definitely improve in some of these areas. If you've turned into a slob who does nothing around the house and never shows appreciation, maybe that's on you. Okay, that makes sense. But let's be straight. Here's what the relationship experts won't tell you. Becoming more domesticated often makes the problem worse, not better. You can't negotiate desire. You can't chore play your way into her panties. The more you try to please her, the more unattractive you become. It's the ultimate paradox. Everything society has taught you about being a good husband actually diminishes your sexual attractiveness to your wife. Plenty of guys do everything right and still get nowhere. You can get in shape, handle your business, communicate openly, bring flowers, do the dishes, and the bedroom door stays locked tight because desire doesn't work like that. Female attraction doesn't respond to niceness or domestic contribution. It responds to strength, confidence, social status, male polarity, all the things society tries to condition out of you. And this is where we actually need to talk about what marriage is. What's the deal we make when we say, I do? Marriage comes with that exclusivity clause. The basic agreement is pretty simple. I won't sleep with other people, and neither will you. That's the foundation of the whole thing. But there's another part that nobody actually talks about. When you agree to be someone's only sexual partner, you're not just promising not to sleep with others. You're implicitly agreeing to actually be their partner. And the deal isn't just, I won't have sex with anybody else. It's, I will have sex with you and only you. It's like taking a job where your contract says you'll be paid $80,000 a year to work exclusively for this company. But then they never give you any assignments while still demanding not to work anywhere else. You'd call bullshit real quick, right? That's what happens in a sexless marriage. One person unilaterally changes the terms while expecting the other person to keep following the original agreement. You still can't sleep with anyone else, but I'm not sleeping with you either. How is that fair? And our gynocentric culture has weird double standards about it. When a man has an affair, he's vilified as like ultimate betrayer. If your buddy gets caught texting another woman, nobody questions his wife's right to take him to the cleaners. Nobody says, well, marriage is about more than just sexual exclusivity, so why are you so upset? But when a woman completely withdraws from sex for years, suddenly that rejected man is told to be patient or focus on other parts of the relationship or stop making such a big deal about sex. This is the same society that'll call a man entitled for expecting sex in his marriage while simultaneously telling women they're empowered for denying their husband. Remember when Tiger Woods got caught cheating years back and his wife went after him with his own golf club? The entire culture basically nodded like, yes, you go, queen. He broke their agreement, but guys living in sexual exile for years are expected to just accept it as this is how marriage works sometimes. The double standard is insane. A woman can end a marriage over a single suspicious text message, and everyone supports her without question. But a guy mentions his wife hasn't touched him in 3 years, and he's likely to hear, is that all you care about? Or marriage just isn't about sex. This is how female imperative shapes our entire cultural understanding of relationships. And no, it's not just about sex, but it's not about sex either. Sexual connection has been part of marriage since marriage was invented. It's not some optional feature you can just remove while keeping everybody else the same. What's wild is that we're living in a time that's all about female consent and autonomy. No one should ever feel pressure to have sex. That's not what we're saying. If you don't want it, you don't want it. That part's 100% true. Your wife's body is her own, always, totally, with that, 100%. But this truth exists alongside like another truth, I guess you could say, that society it refuses to acknowledge. Men have sexual needs, and marriage is supposed to be a legitimate outlet for those needs. The same culture that shames men for only wanting one thing also shames them for seeking that one thing within their marriage. It's a rigged game. It's like if you and your buddy opened a restaurant together, equal investment, equal work, equal profits, then one day your buddy stops showing up. Months pass, he's still expecting his cut, still has his name on the door, still calls himself a restaurant owner, but he's not actually working there anymore. You wouldn't consider that a functioning partnership, would you? You might not immediately dissolve the business, especially if there are complications, but you'll definitely recognize the original agreement is dead. Marriage is obviously more complicated than a business. Well, it depends for some. You've got kids, you've got a shared property, intertwined families, emotional history, all the reasons why just leave isn't always helpful. Many guys choose to stay in sexless marriages for these exact reasons. But staying doesn't mean pretending. It doesn't mean acting like everything's normal when it's not. It doesn't mean accepting that you've somehow signed up for involuntary celibacy for the rest of your life while you're providing all the financial security, all the emotional support, and domestic contribution you always have. This isn't about blaming anybody. Evolutionary biology is what it is. Female nature responds to incentives. Once the incentive of securing commitment is achieved, the cost-benefit analysis changes. It's true. There are legitimate reasons why someone's interest in sex might disappear, and many deserve understanding. But understanding doesn't mean denying reality. It doesn't mean ignoring legitimate pain of the rejected partner. And it definitely doesn't mean pretending that fundamentally changing the nature of your relationship without discussion is somehow okay. You got to know the difference between a dry spell and a desert. Every marriage hits rough patches. That's normal. Maybe you got a new baby turning your life upside down. Maybe she's dealing with some health issues. Maybe work is crushing you both. Life happens, and sometimes sex takes a backseat for a while. That's normal. But there's a massive difference between not right now and not ever again. Between I need some time and this part of my life is over. Yeah? Between a phase and your new permanent reality. Too many guys are walking around in this limbo, afraid to even name what's happening. They're like a character in every zombie movie who gets bitten but keeps insisting, it's just a scratch. Months turn into years, and they'll still be waiting for things to get back to normal. And it's painfully clear that the new normal has taken over. And good luck finding a straight talk about this anywhere. Mainstream relationship advice is completely blue-pilled on this topic. We know this. You'll find a million articles spicing things up in the bedroom about date nights, about sexy texts, but they're all operating on a false premise that your wife actually wants to desire you, but just needs the right mood or setting. The harsh truth, if she's genuinely attracted to you, she'll find a way to fuck you even if you're both exhausted and the house is a mess. That's the brutal truth. What no one wants to admit is that long-term monogamy is actually at odds with female sexual nature. Women are naturally hypergamous. They're wired to desire the highest value male they can get. Once they secure the commitment from you, the evolutionary drive often seeks the next challenge. It's the same reason why many women, or I should say so many women, initiate divorce. They secure the provider, then they get bored, and then they seek excitement somewhere else. Guys in this situation end up with this toxic mix of emotions. You feel unwanted, undesirable, somehow broken. You wonder what happened, what changed, what you did wrong. And the silence around this whole issue just makes you feel even more alone with the problem. The mainstream would have you believe this is all about communication or emotional intimacy. But guys who swallow the red pill know better. You can communicate until you're blue in the face. You can connect emotionally all day long. If she's not physically attracted to you anymore, none of that shit matters. In contracts, there's this thing called severability. Basically, it means if one part of a contract gets broken, the rest can still stand. That's actually a useful way to think about marriages, by the way, where sex has disappeared. Because a marriage is multiple agreements packed into one. It's like financial partnership, parenting, emotional support, companionship, and sexual exclusivity all like rolled into one, amongst some other things. If the sexual part breaks down, either through cheating or through permanent withdrawal, that doesn't automatically mean every other aspect is worthless. Plenty of couples stay together after someone cheats. They recognize while the exclusivity got violated, the rest of their marriage is worth saving. Similarly, many people stay in sexless marriages because the other components, like, raising kids, friendship, financial security, family ties, those remain valuable. But there's a crucial difference in how these situations get handled. After cheating, the breach gets acknowledged, it's named, the couple either works to fix that aspect or they explicitly negotiate terms, maybe through an open marriage. Either way, there's clarity. And the truth is, as far as open marriages go, if the man cheats just to get his nut off, it typically is excusable because he still loves his wife. If a woman steps outside of the marriage, she steps outside because she no longer wants her husband at all, and she's moved on emotionally invested in another man. When a man cheats, he doesn't have to be emotionally invested in another woman at all, which is why men can pay for sex, something that's really hard to fathom for women. And in sexless marriages, too often the breach goes unnamed and the rejection continues indefinitely, while expectation of fidelity stays firmly in place. And the rejected man just has to suck it up without complaint. Because let's be honest, 99% of the times it's the man. Unless the woman somehow truly it's like she turned into a complete land willy, seriously, which is kind of rare, and guys will still have sex with their wives even when they gain weight. And that's actually the truly messed up part. It's not the lack of sex itself, but the gaslighting that comes with it. The suggestion that wanting physical intimacy as a man with your own wife makes you some kind of sex-obsessed pervert. The implication that if you really loved her, you wouldn't care about this one small aspect of your relationship. That's manipulation, plain and simple. It's like not feeding someone for days and then calling them obsessed with food when they mention being hungry. Some needs are basic, and pretending otherwise is bullshit. Imagine if we applied the same logic to other parts of marriage. Would we tell a woman whose husband stopped talking to her, marriage isn't just about conversation? Would we tell someone whose significant other stopped showing any affection, you're making too big of a deal about hugs? Would we tell a woman whose man refused to contribute financially for no reason, if you really loved them, you wouldn't care about money? Of course not, because we recognize these as reasonable expectations. But with sex, suddenly the conversation gets all weird. This hits guys particularly hard because of how male psychology works. Whether mainstream society wants to admit it or not, men tie a lot of their self-worth to their sexuality and being sexually desired. When your wife doesn't want you anymore, it's not just about physical release. It's a blow to your core identity as a man. Add to this that men are supposed to be stoic about emotional pain while simultaneously not complaining about lack of sex because that would make you seem entitled. And you've got a perfect recipe for suffering in silence. This is how the feminine imperative works, by making men feel ashamed of their natural masculine needs. And some guys try to numb the pain. They throw themselves into work like that might somehow fix things. They build elaborate man caves and gaming setups that would make a 16-year-old jealous. They spend hours at the gym trying to sculpt themselves into something desirable. They find themselves doom scrolling at 3 a.m., looking at other couples and wondering if those people are faking it too. Other guys get bitter. They become that dude making ball and chain jokes at work. It's pathetic. They simmer with resentment. They pick fights over stupid shit because the real issue feels untouchable. They become the stereotype that reinforces the men only want sex narrative because their pain has no outlet. And some guys just shut down completely. They go through the motions of marriage while emotionally checking out. They become ghosts in their own homes, physically present, but they're mentally gone. The light behind their eyes dims a little more each year. This is how men die inside while still walking around. and none of these responses work. But they're understandable reactions to an impossible situation, being held to an agreement that's been fundamentally changed without your input, while simultaneously being told you're wrong for even noticing a damn thing. So what can you actually do? First, you have to swallow the red pill. Accept female nature for what it is, not what Disney told you it should be. Understand that her lack of desire isn't about doing something wrong. It's about basic evolutionary psychology. If sex permanently left your marriage and you've tried the obvious fixes, getting in shape if you were out of shape, reclaiming your masculine frame, actually standing on your boundaries and principles, becoming more of a challenge rather than a doormat and a yes man, then you have to acknowledge that the original deal has changed, but only if you've done all those things already. From there, you've got options. You can accept the new reality and find fulfillment elsewhere, work, hobbies, friendships, other women, whatever gives your life meaning beyond sex if you can. Many men throughout history have redirected their sexual energy towards, creation and achievement. But to be honest, some guys already have that in their lives, and the only thing missing is literally sex. So men will go the route of professionals, and women don't seem to understand why. Well, they know exactly why when they're in the marriage, but they will tell family and friends that, he's just a pervert, a sex-addicted fiend, and he wants it all the time. And they'll shift the blame of not even wanting to touch their husbands on them in that manner. Another thing you can try to do is renegotiate. Maybe an open arrangement where you seek physical connection elsewhere. That probably won't go over well, but oh well. You have to maintain your private relationship somehow. Maybe you don't want to split apart for the kids. Just understand that this often works better in theory than in practice. Women typically want to control access to sex even when they don't want it themselves. Or you can decide that permanent celibacy isn't what you signed up for and you can end things as cleanly as possible. Just be prepared for society to label you the bad guy for, leaving just because of sex. Also be prepared for the financial rape that often follows divorce for men. We've covered it plenty of times. And none of these options are easy, and none guarantee happiness, but all of them beat the hell out of the silent suffering that defines so many sexless marriages and dead bedrooms. The hard truth is that when one partner permanently cuts off physical intimacy while still expecting exclusivity, they're asking for something fundamentally unfair. All of the benefits of monogamy with none of the reciprocal responsibility. They're saying you can't have sex with me, and you also can't have sex with anyone else. They're basically sentencing their partner to a lifetime of involuntary celibacy without knowing it, or at least without acknowledging it. Apply this logic to anywhere else, and its absurdity becomes obvious. Imagine a friend saying, I won't ever go to restaurants with you anymore, but I also don't want you going to restaurants with anyone else. You'd call them out immediately. Yet with sex in marriage, we pretend the dynamic makes sense somehow. We need to change how we talk about this. Not to pressure anyone into unwanted sex. That's never the answer either. You don't want her to be a starfish. That's boring as hell. You want to be desired. And it's not to demonize women for following their biological programming, but to acknowledge the legitimate pain of rejected men. I recognize that permanently withdrawing from sexual intimacy while expecting continued monogamy, provision, and protection fundamentally changes the relationship. So if you're that guy staring at the ceiling while your wife sleeps with her back to you, know this. You're not alone, and you're not crazy for feeling hurt. You're also not shallow for wanting physical intimacy with your wife. And you don't have to pretend everything's fine when it's not. Your needs matter too, and your happiness matters. And while these are no simple solutions, the first step toward anything better is seeing your situation clearly. You don't have to be bitter or blame anybody, but with a clear understanding of female nature and the reality of long-term relationships. Because nothing changes until you name it. And this particular pain has gone unnamed for way too long. Too many men are suffering in silence, thinking they're the only ones experiencing this particular hell. Sex just isn't about getting off. It's about connection, validation, being wanted, being seen. It's about a space where two people come together in the most intimate way possible. When that disappears from a marriage, something big is lost. And acknowledging that loss isn't selfish, man. It's just being honest. They say they want communication from you. Show them. And so start with honesty. And that means probably with yourself first, then maybe with your partner if the situation warrants it. No accusations, no ultimatums, just the truth. This matters to me. My needs aren't being met. Something has to change. Where you go from there is your call. But whatever path you choose, walk it with your eyes open, your needs acknowledged, and with the understanding that you deserve a relationship where your masculine nature is valued, not vilified. And with that having been said, I appreciate you guys for tuning in, like usual. If you want to see more topics, or if you got any topic ideas, please do send me a message over on the email or leave them in the comments below. I do read some of the upvoted ones. And appreciate you guys for tuning in. As usual, we'll see you on the private community. If you haven't, subscribe. Links are in the description below. Also, thank you to everybody that's been doing the private consults. It's been a blast speaking with you. And as usual, boys, we'll see you on the next one. Take care of yourselves.